Have you ever had the feeling that you notice things long before everyone else does? Not because someone told you, not because you collected enough evidence to prove it, but because something inside you recognized a pattern before your conscious mind could explain it. Perhaps you sensed tension in a relationship months before it ended. Perhaps you knew a job was wrong for you before you could articulate why. Perhaps you walked into a room and immediately felt the emotional atmosphere without a single word being spoken. Many highly sensitive and neurodivergent women share this experience. They often spend years questioning themselves because the world teaches them to trust logic first and perception second. Yet over time they begin noticing something remarkable. Again and again, what they sensed turns out not to be random. What they were perceiving was often a pattern that their nervous system recognized before their conscious mind had caught up. One of the most misunderstood aspects of ADHD is that beneath the distractibility, the overwhelm, and the challenges with executive functioning, there is often an extraordinary capacity for pattern recognition. The same brain that struggles to filter information is also absorbing enormous amounts of information simultaneously. Emotional cues, environmental details, facial expressions, subtle changes in tone of voice, inconsistencies in behavior, unspoken dynamics, memories, associations, and possibilities are constantly being processed in the background. While this can be exhausting, it can also create a way of perceiving reality that differs significantly from conventional linear thinking. Rather than moving from point A to point B, many neurodivergent minds naturally perceive networks, relationships, and recurring structures. They do not simply collect information, they connect it. This ability is often misunderstood because modern society tends to reward sequential thinking. We are taught to analyze, categorize, and move through information in a predictable order. Yet life itself rarely unfolds that way. Human relationships are not linear. Emotional growth is not linear. Spiritual development is not linear. The deeper you look at reality, the more you begin to see patterns repeating across different areas of life. Certain fears produce certain behaviors. Certain environments create certain emotional states. Certain beliefs generate certain experiences. What appears to be chaos on the surface often reveals an underlying structure when viewed over time. For many neurodivergent women, this recognition feels almost instinctive. They may not always know how to explain what they see, but they often sense the pattern long before they can articulate it. This is where Kabbalah becomes particularly fascinating. Many people approach Kabbalah as a mystical tradition filled with symbols, hidden teachings, and esoteric concepts. Yet beneath all of that lies something surprisingly practical. Kabbalah is fundamentally concerned with understanding the structures that organize reality. The tree of life is not merely a spiritual diagram. It is a map of recurring principles. It suggests that beneath the apparent complexity of life, there are patterns that repeat at every level of existence. The same forces that operate within an individual can be observed within relationships, communities, societies, and spiritual development. Different forms emerge, but the underlying dynamics remain remarkably similar. For someone with a pattern-oriented mind, this idea often feels immediately familiar. It resonates because it reflects the way many neurodivergent women already experience the world. They often feel that there is more happening beneath the surface than most people acknowledge. They sense that events are connected. They notice that lessons repeat. They observe that certain themes keep appearing in different forms throughout their lives. While others focus on individual incidents, They are often unconsciously searching for the structure beneath those incidents. They want to understand not only what is happening, but why the same kinds of experiences seem to return again and again. One of the most important concepts in Kabbalah is the relationship between Chochmah and Binah. Understanding these two forces reveals something profound about the neurodivergent experience. Chochmah is often translated as wisdom, but it is not wisdom in the conventional sense. Chochmah represents the flash of insight. It is the sudden realization that arrives before explanation. It is the moment when an idea appears fully formed, before logic has had time to build the bridge that connects all the pieces. Many ADHD women know this experience intimately. A solution appears unexpectedly. A connection becomes obvious. An insight emerges seemingly out of nowhere. There is a knowing that arrives before understanding. Yet Chochmah is only half of the process. After the flash of insight comes Binah. Binah is understanding, structure, and containment. It takes the raw inspiration of Chochmah and gives it form. It transforms intuitive knowing into something that can be integrated, communicated, and applied. Many neurodivergent women find themselves living in the tension between these two forces. They receive powerful insights, yet struggle to organize them. They perceive patterns, yet find it difficult to explain how they arrived at their conclusions. They see the whole picture, but translating that picture into linear language can feel challenging. What is fascinating is that Kabbalah does not suggest choosing one over the other. It does not say that intuition is superior to structure, nor that structure is superior to intuition. Instead, it teaches that wisdom emerges when both work together. Chochmah without Binah becomes scattered inspiration. Binah without Chochmah becomes rigid analysis. True understanding arises when insight and structure enter into relationship with one another. For many neurodivergent women, this may be one of the central developmental tasks of life. Not suppressing intuition, but building containers strong enough to hold it. This dynamic helps explain why so many highly sensitive and ADHD women are drawn toward symbolic systems such as Kabbalah, mythology, archetypes, and sacred traditions. Outsiders sometimes assume this attraction comes from a desire to escape reality. In many cases, the opposite is true. These women are not searching for fantasy, they are searching for structure. They are looking for maps that can help organize the complexity they perceive. Symbolic systems provide frameworks that connect seemingly unrelated experiences into coherent patterns. They offer language for realities that are often difficult to describe using purely analytical approaches. Many women discover these systems after years of feeling different. They may have spent much of their lives sensing things they could not explain. They noticed emotional undercurrents that others overlooked. They recognized contradictions in people's behavior. They felt overwhelmed by environments that seemed perfectly manageable to everyone else. They often carried the impression that they were seeing something important, yet lacked a framework that could help them understand what they were perceiving. Then they encounter a symbolic system, and suddenly things begin to make sense. The world does not become simpler, but it becomes more coherent. This search for coherence relates closely to a Kabbalistic concept known as the point in the heart. The point in the heart is often described as an inner longing for meaning, truth, and deeper understanding. It is the feeling that ordinary explanations are somehow incomplete. It is the impulse that drives a person to look beneath appearances and search for the deeper structures that shape existence. When this point awakens, people often become less interested in surface-level answers. They begin asking different questions. They want to understand why certain patterns repeat. They want to know what lies beneath human behavior. They become fascinated by the hidden architecture of life. For many neurodivergent women, this longing feels familiar. They often report feeling different from an early age, not necessarily because they were interested in spirituality, but because they were interested in understanding. They wanted to know why people behaved the way they did. They wanted to know why they felt different. They wanted to understand the forces shaping their experiences. In many cases, what appears to be a spiritual search is actually a search for underlying order. They are looking for a pattern large enough to hold the complexity of their lives. However, every gift contains a shadow, and pattern recognition is no exception. One of the dangers of a highly associative mind is that it can begin seeing patterns everywhere. The same ability that allows a person to perceive genuine connections can also create connections that do not exist. This is why discernment is so important. Kabbalah repeatedly emphasizes balance because balance protects us from confusion. The goal is not to interpret every coincidence as a sign or every emotional experience as a message from the universe. The goal is to cultivate clarity. Genuine wisdom requires both openness and grounding. It requires the willingness to perceive patterns while remaining connected to reality. This distinction between perception and projection is particularly important for highly sensitive individuals. Sensitive nervous systems naturally absorb more information. They notice more details. They perceive more subtle shifts. Yet greater perception also creates greater responsibility. Not every feeling contains hidden meaning. Not every coincidence carries spiritual significance. Mature intuition is not defined by how many patterns it sees. Mature intuition is defined by its ability to distinguish between meaningful patterns and imagined ones. As pattern recognition develops, its focus gradually shifts. In the beginning, it often centers on external events. People become fascinated by signs, synchronicities, and symbolic connections. Over time, however, the deeper purpose begins to emerge. Pattern recognition becomes less about understanding the world and more about understanding oneself. The recurring themes in relationships become visible. The recurring fears become visible. The recurring defenses become visible. The individual begins noticing that while circumstances change, certain internal patterns remain remarkably consistent. This is where transformation begins. Most people attempt to change their lives by changing external circumstances. They change jobs, relationships, routines, or locations. Sometimes these changes are necessary, yet true transformation occurs when underlying patterns change. The same emotional reaction that appears in different situations becomes visible. The same limiting belief that shapes multiple experiences becomes visible. The same survival strategy that once provided protection but now creates suffering becomes visible. Once a pattern becomes conscious, choice becomes possible. Perhaps this is the deepest spiritual purpose of pattern recognition. It is not about predicting the future. It is not about possessing secret knowledge. It is not about being different from other people. Its purpose may be far simpler and far more profound. Pattern recognition helps us move from unconscious repetition to conscious participation. It allows us to see the structures that shape our lives. It reveals the lessons hidden within recurring experiences. It helps us recognize where growth is asking to happen. From a Kabbalistic perspective, spiritual development is often described as a movement from fragmentation toward integration. We begin life experiencing reality as separate pieces. Different events appear unrelated. Different challenges seem disconnected. Over time, deeper understanding reveals the connections between them. We begin seeing how our nervous system influences our choices, how our choices influence our relationships, how our relationships influence our identity, and how our identity influences our spiritual development. What once appeared fragmented gradually reveals itself as a connected whole. Perhaps this is why pattern-oriented minds feel so drawn toward understanding. They are searching for unity beneath apparent separation. They are searching for the hidden architecture that links one experience to another. They are seeking coherence in a world that often appears chaotic. When guided by wisdom, structure, and discernment, this search becomes a powerful force for growth. If you have spent your life feeling different because of the way your mind notices connections, perhaps the question is not whether that ability is a gift or a burden. Perhaps the real question is whether you are learning how to work with it consciously. Because when intuition is grounded by structure, when perception is balanced by discernment, and when pattern recognition is guided by wisdom rather than fear, it becomes more than a cognitive trait. It becomes a path toward greater self-awareness, greater integration, and a deeper understanding of both yourself and the hidden structures that shape human experience. Thank you for being here. If sacred structure resonates with you, subscribe and join us every Sunday as we explore Kabbalah, archetypes, neurodivergence, and the deeper patterns that help sensitive minds create more balance, meaning, and inner stability. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep building sacred structure into your life.